Hello and welcome to The Public Good. This is Deja James with Partnership for the Public Good, who comes to you with 350 partner organizations working to build a better Buffalo. We are so excited because we're at the end of the year and we recently had our community agenda process. For those who don't know, all of our 350 plus partners are invited to pitch ideas on how to better their own communities. We recently just had that last week, Friday. By the time you hear this, about 2 weeks ago in the beginning of December, where community groups from all over Buffalo, including nonprofit organizations, legal organizations, direct service organizations, grassroots, block clubs, neighborhood groups, all of the above came together to vote on an agenda that they want to see for their community in 2025. It's a big year coming up with us having a mayoral election, and so local level policy is important as it ever was. So we're really excited to be doing that, and we are excited to announce officially that agenda on January 17th at our public rollout. We will be giving you more information for that on our website, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere you get information from PPG at PPG Buffalo. But first, I am really excited to have my guest today, which is a little sneak preview before our January 17th debut of our entire agenda. But on our agenda, we are so excited and honored to have the Eastside Parkways Coalition with their Restore Humboldt Parkway initiative on the agenda this year. And I have a couple of representatives from that group here today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So I don't know who wants to start first. Maybe we can start from Matt and kind of go around if you want to.
So, okay. Yeah, Matthew Austin. I'm a member of the Eastside Parkways Coalition and chair of our PPG Plank team.
My name is Sherry Sherrill, and I'm a project facilitator from the We Are Women Warriors organization and also a member of Eastside Parkways Coalition.
I'm Terry Robinson, a longtime resident homeowner on Humboldt Parkway and have lived in the community for 70 years. I'm also a advocate in a personal way of our Restore the Parkway, and our emphasis being first and foremost on the homeowners and the people directly affected. But I'm just one of the throng of really wonderful people at the Eastside Parkways Coalition that forms a network.
Hi, my name is Patrick Cray. Pardon me. I'm a member of Eastside Parkway Coalition. I'm a plaintiff in some of the health issues that have been occurring from the East Side, living on Interpark and Sydney. And I've pretty much grown up in that area. And many of my family members have grown up on Glenwood, and we played in the grassy area. That was our only grassy area that we could find. So climbed hills, drag people down mountains, down hills and whatever. So it was fun as children, but now we have to deal with it. So I'd like to thank the PPG for bringing us in. Thank you very much. And your entire staff in this wonderful building. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've already, both of you, talked about the, history and the impact that this project currently and both in the past as well has impacted our community. And so I would love to just start out with, what did Humboldt really used to be, and what did it mean to the community, and what did it mean for it to then be literally stripped away? And how has that impact kind of stayed until today? I'm going to start there. I don't want to do so many questions in one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's absolutely impossible to convey that really quickly. Mm-hmm. But just let's start with the fact that this was a Carnegie library. It's where I went to the library when I was 5 or 6 years old. And then it's been transformed into this thing where you all are moving forward the agenda for the general public mm-hmm. at large. And it still continues as a force in that way. So nothing ends or begins the way you kind of expect it. But the Humboldt Parkway that I grew up on was a affluent corridor, but it was also a transformational corridor. So at that time, when people think back to the early 1960s and we saw, if you will, the creation of a black middle class that was at the forefront of that. And a lot of the people that were at the forefront of that were leaders not only locally but nationally. And it was a place, though, where we saw the transformation. When I was taken home to a house that my dad bought, 3 houses from Humboldt Parkway deliberately, our next door neighbors were the Crineheaders. And it was a multicultural community. The neighborhood store owner was Fred Hahn, a survivor of the Holocaust. The people I went to school with were Aluzi, Dobius, O'Rourke, a polyglot community. And when I was baptized at St. Francis de Sales Church down the street, in 1954, shortly after my birth, and went to St. Francis de Sales School, it was probably 95% white, Caucasian in the first grade and run by the nuns. And by the time I reached 8th grade, it may have been 85% African American. And the transition that happened in the neighborhood was similar. But what did not change during that period of time was the physical median, the parkway that existed where we played football. Like you say, they'd be mounds of snow, king of the mountain in the winter, a whole series of things. You might picnic, you might have a block party, you might have all sorts of things. In the meantime, people rode, there was an equestrian path through there. So it was a park and parkway that was part of the best and most original system of Olmsted's genius first occurred here. So then we became a victim, if you will, of that. And the concrete canyon that replaced it, the noise that continues, the pollution that's belched out, the transformation that happened in those 10, 12, 15 short years reflects the transformation that happened from a prosperous East Side, burgeoning Black middle class community to if people remember the smog, and smog used to be a thing in New York City. You know, New York City went broke, et cetera, et cetera. So Buffalo went through a lot of changes. A lot of them negative, but at the same time, always moving forward in certain ways. But we went through this guy next to me is sort of a hero. At the time that he was an active police officer in the city of Buffalo, Buffalo had the 3rd most violent precinct in the state of New York during the crack wars of the middle 80s, et cetera. So that was a piece of the action all the way through it. Now we have a chance to do it again, to build it right.
If I could also piggyback on what Terry has said, just to give another historical perspective on Humboldt Parkway and its importance. It should be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but instead it is this decimated community because of this vehicular sewer that New York State Department of Transportation imposed upon the community. Back when Frederick Law Olmsted and his firm, with his partner Calvert Vaux, designed Prospect Park in Brooklyn, they also were commissioned to look at the city of Buffalo for the purpose of installing or constructing what was going to be our own Central Park. Well, when they got here, what they decided to do instead was to create, instead of a park within a city like Manhattan has, to create here in Buffalo a city within a park. They said Buffalo was one of the best designed cities in the world. So in 1870 to 1898, they constructed the world's first fully interconnected park and parkway system. That's very important because in Manhattan, New York City got a park. Brooklyn got a park. Buffalo got a park and parkway system that was all interconnected. And Humboldt Parkway was absolutely the jewel of that system. It was established in 1892. And of course, at the time, it was not a predominantly African-American neighborhood, but during the second movement of the Great Migration in the 1940s through the early 1970s, Very many Black and African American families moved there, beginning on the side streets, and then to a larger degree, prestigious families moved into the Hamlin Park community, as Terry has said. So here we are looking at an opportunity, as he's just said, to undo the harm, all the detrimental, direly decimating harm and debilitating harm that was done by the construction of the Kensington Expressway, which brought adverse health impacts to Humboldt Parkway neighborhood residents, which is one of our primary motivating reasons for requiring, through one of the lawsuits we have, an environmental impact statement, starting with and including especially an adverse health impacts statement.
Can we get into the health impacts of the now, like you said, I love the vehicular sewer term. That was like really impactful. And I know you currently have a lawsuit, you have we have a plaintiff here. What have the health impacts been that have not properly been documented?
I know, Patrick, you're going to follow up after I finish, I hope.
Yes, I can.
Humboldt Parkway neighborhood, the east side of Buffalo, is within the worst 90th through 98th percentile for lung cancers, upper respiratory diseases, sarcoidosis, dementia, Alzheimer, asthma, lung cancer issues, heart diseases, hypertension, you name it. Everything that is connected, every ailment, disease that is connected to pollution is impacting the Humboldt Parkway neighborhood, and has for the 69 years that the Kensington Expressway has existed. And Patrick has a personal story about that. He has family members and himself that is evidence of that.
Yeah, Patrick, please.
Yeah, and we can reach back a little bit. I remember when I lived in Pennsylvania, I was only 6 years old, and that Black migration of which Sherry mentioned, many of my uncles were sending letters back and forth from where they were living in the South, and they wanted to come to Buffalo to actually get a better life for themselves. And that began when the migration was already taking place. So they said, wow, Buffalo, Western New York, Rochester, people are moving up here so that they can make money and live for their own. So we moved on Washington Street from Pennsylvania, and I was only 6, 7 years old. And then from Washington Street, we moved over on Interpark, which is only my house, which was 46 Interpark. It's less than half of the way from the Humboldt Parkway corner. And that was a large green grassy area when we moved over there to 46 Interpark. My aunt, who raised me, because my mother passed away in Pennsylvania before I came to Buffalo, and her sister took in 6 children, all my siblings. So we moved up here and stuff, and unbeknownst to us, who knew that we would be up there playing in the grassy area, walking our German Shepherd dog, and just having fun as children. Yeah. Now, Terry's a little bit older than me, I think, right?
Just a little bit.
But, people that come up at this age with asthma. My aunt who raised us had chronic asthma, and she would be wheezing all the time. And, out cooking in the backyard when it's snowing outside, cooking ribs and stuff. Who knew that she would be suffering from the adverse effects of that whole area? I have cousins that all centered into our home, and many of them are dead. One of them have already passed away, like 2 weeks ago, of chronic bronchial asthma and chronic heart disease and stuff. There are several members of my family that lived on Glenwood, right here between Glenwood near Brooklyn Street, and we always used to go back and forth to each other's home. This family had 9 family members, all my first cousins, and 4 of them have already passed away of some type of cancer, and heart disease and chronic bronchitis and that. So these things are very, effective in certain families, and my family are just part of it. But when we look at it and say, okay, where are these illnesses coming from? How are we getting them? Many of them that are passed on are still dealing with those incidents of illnesses, are wondering, was it affected by some kind of environmental issue? And it turns out right now, as I got on the Eastside Parkway Coalition, you've heard the record, things that make you go,
Yeah.
So certainly, yes, because we don't know. And here it is, many of my family members have died on, and those that are still surviving have a breather with them. They carry it around with them and sleep with it and stuff like that,
Right.
because they are dealing with those illnesses.
And that's absolutely terrible. And, you know, for me, being as young as I'm a native Buffalonian myself, and to hear from you, I mean, I've never seen the Parkway the way it was. You know, I've always grown up with the vehicular tour, right? And so it's when I saw those pictures on you all social media, and please go to the Eastside Parkways Coalition on Facebook, Instagram, and different things like that. You can see so much. They have so much good information. And just the photographs I saw of that parkway, and I saw the beautiful old trees, and my heart broke. Like it really affected me for a moment. I was just scrolling my phone, and you guys posted that, and it made me pause to see what was destroyed, and to just know, you know, for me, there's nothing but hate around that decision. You know, I mean, I don't understand how you see something like that and say, for the sake of suburban access, we're going to dig this up.
You had to be, you know, it's hard for folks to get the full picture.
Yeah.
My father loved the Expressway because it was, when you're talking America in the early 60s and 70s, harder, faster, stronger, bigger, better. People don't realize the city of Buffalo got $5 billion in money during the World War II. That's $5 billion World War II 1940 dollars infusion into the industry here. That was the war industry. They built cars, they built tanks, they built planes, and the labor force that came up. Railroad was when railroad was king in America. This was the second largest railroad city in the country, and it was the International Brotherhood of Pullman Porters that caused the integration of the armed forces of the United States. There was political power. Sherry's brilliant relation to giving you the historic picture of this. You know, this city, the Parkway, when you go from the Museum of Science down to Delaware Park, there was an American president assassinated at the end of it in 1901. The day before that, he was at the reservation that Olmsted developed as the first state park. There's a relationship here that goes, Olmsted and Vaux coined the term parkway. This is one of the original parkways in America. It was in 1920s that the term became associated with the automobile and motor cars. But think about who was driving motor cars in the early 20s and 30s and 40s. It wasn't any women. It wasn't any average Americans. They were powerful things. They were toys. The first parkway was a Vanderbilt Parkway, and it was Robert Moses that changed the meaning of parkway into these expressways. We're fighting that battle again 75 years later between Robert Moses and the mindset of Robert Moses and the New York State Department of Transportation and Olmsted again.
Yeah, I know. I think historically too, if you go back, like there's always been residents that have been kind of fighting this. I know back in 1949 at the Common Council's legislation meeting, when the state was actually coming in to build the main Humboldt overpass, there was hundreds of people in the chambers. There was like 1,000 people signing petitions. So I think even before it was built, there's always been a group of city residents that have been opposing it. And then there's been work, essentially even before it was built, there's been the vision of returning it to its original vision. I know there's been a group like the Restore Our Community Coalition who have been doing work of actually planning it. So it's not like the state came in, built this, and it's been popular. Like there's residents in the city that oppose it at its foundation. I think ever since it's been built, there's been.
But I think that's interesting, the context you bring up, Terry, also of like development and that kind of, mid, time in the 20th century where it was like open road, cars, you get your stallion car and all these other things. And some of that rhetoric, I mean, even up until the early 2000s, even when I was younger, it still was that American dream, open road, like we want highways, we want to, and that was the thinking. And I think as we've progressed and gotten a little bit more into the future, now it's more like, oh yeah, maybe we should think about public transportation. Maybe we should think about other ways of transport. But up until recently, it's been that kind of like push of the car industry, of the vehicle industry.
They called it horse and buggy thinking. So at the time, like if you were for the Parkway, you were like kind of branded as like, oh, you're not. This is the future. Like these are horse and buggy thinkers, which is kind of ironic because it was like horse and buggy thinking versus muddled state planning, which is kind of like.
Well, that's what killed this used to be the city of good neighbors. What made the city of good neighbors were good neighborhoods. You may grow up in an Irish, Polish, Italian, Black community, but there was a connection and a flow so that when my grandfather walked to the Broadway Market or Sattlers, or people visited the Little Harlem or Pine Grill or the Apollo Theater, or where Fred Young and his brothers invented the chicken wing. There was a cross pollination that died at the same time that they built this expressway. But like I said, my dad loved it. I mean, he could be, and you still can be, anywhere in the Buffalo metropolitan area in under 20 minutes.
Yeah. You know, the Kensington Expressway could be a case study. The Kensington Expressway project included in that could be a case study in how to murder a city. Freeways just like Route 33 were constructed all across America, especially through neighborhoods that were already or that were already increasingly becoming largely Black and African American and Latino. And just like Terry said, his father was enamored of the expressway because you have to understand it was during the Cold War era. And it was at a time when the Department of Defense was very much also involved in these building of these highways, recommending that they be built, supposedly so that residents of cities could quickly be moved in and out in case America was attacked on our own shores. Right. But they were very much the Departments of Transportation getting all this money from the federal government and using state monies. They were very much telling the public, this is the best thing since sliced bread.
Hello.
This is going to make the city better. There's going to be so many cars in the city of Buffalo streets by 1960. This highway will have been absolutely necessary to have been constructed. That was absolutely not the case. There are fewer cars on the streets of America in 1960 than there were when the highway was first started. Just like there are fewer cars on the streets of Buffalo now than there were even in 1960. Well,
because then we also had a population liquidation where everybody was leaving either way with a highway or not, because we're used with the businesses, and then the industrialization died and all those other things. Yeah. But they're trying to sell the same thing now, because I want to get to now. So now they're selling the story of, we're going to build this tunnel, we're going to put a cap, we're going to put a little park on top of it, and you all are going to love it. Yes, it's going to fix everything.
And at what cost? Because there are some dollars involved in this whole matter. And then why are those dollars involved? So maybe
follow the money.
Well, the problem with the way the project was sold in this generation is it was actually forced on the community. The decision to place a cap on the Kensington Expressway was actually made by the DOT way back in 2007. The problem with that date is that it was in 2009, the DOT organized a community advisory committee made up of what ultimately became groups like Black Chamber of Commerce, a couple of block clubs here and there, Restore Our Community Coalitions, Hamlin Park Taxpayers Association. Those individuals that were part of that community advisory committee, under the guise of taking part as stakeholders in dialogues about what kind of project was going to happen whenever the Kensington Expressway project in this generation occurred.
But the decision was already made.
They were told what kind of project was going to happen. They were absolutely told, even though they did make the claim that there's been adverse health impacts, though, and quote unquote, in the words of the chairman of Restore Our Community Coalition, who said, was quoted in WBFO back in 2023, the road is killing us. We need to stop the road from killing us. I don't know how many other ways you can say that your infrastructure is deadly, dangerous, and needs to be removed without just coming out and saying it. But maybe because they did ever say it is why Eastside Parkways Coalition said, no, put the brakes on before you steamroll this project over and against this community's health, wealth, best interests, and wellness. We are going to let you know, New York State Department of Transportation and public elected official establishment, that the community does have a choice, must have a choice, and what the community's preference is has got to be paid attention to, because for 69 very, very long years, people have been getting sick, people have been dying, people have not been able to even sit on the porches of their beautiful Humboldt Parkway neighborhood homes because of all the noise pollution and the actual other environmental pollutants in the air. And something has to be done. You've got $1 billion. You have an environmental justice mandate that the Biden administration ran on and said that the highway infrastructure projects that are done during this administration will absolutely take environmental justice under the mantle of those projects, and we will address what has disparaged and damaged inner city communities all across this country for the last 3 generations. That was something worth fighting for. And so the community within Eastside Parkways Coalition at the lead is now making it very, very clear to the various Buffalo Common Council, who has said inexplicably, this is not a city issue.
That's bizarre.
The Humboldt Parkway neighborhood's health, wealth, wellness, best interest somehow escapes the city of Buffalo Common Council in this generation's ability to grasp as being their issue. But in 2010, let me tell you something that happened. Maston District Council member Damone Smith sponsored a resolution asking the New York State Department of Transportation to look at all possible options for the Kensington Expressway project before settling upon a cap. A year before that, then Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown wrote a letter to the Department of Transportation asking for, instead of a cap, a fill-in. And he asked, is it just possible to just fill it in and turn it into a boulevard? We know that Restore Our Community Coalition and Humboldt Parkway neighborhood residents, they didn't back then, I'm talking about Rock back then, did not want a boulevard. They don't want 8 lanes of traffic on the Humboldt Parkway. They wanted the restoration of the Parkway. Eastside Parkways Coalition has just picked up that mantle and is running with it right now.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And you all have done, a couple of actionable things right now to, combat this current, like you said, steamrolling of a certain type of project and a decision that's been made clearly and obviously years ago. So what are some of the measures that you all have been taking to kind of make a stand? And you did succeed in getting the project paused for a while. So what have those steps been like in this fight against DOT in New York State?
The first step was getting the community involved, so that letting the community know this is the time to raise our voices and be heard, and to demand to be heard if there is resistance to that. And there was profound resistance to that. The race card was even played. Where were you back in the day against, Eastside Parkways Coalition's involvement, engagement, advocacy effort was even played. And to that we responded, look, we've always been here. We live in the city of Buffalo. And just like Dr. King said, we cannot afford in this country, in this city, in this county, in this region, anywhere in America, we can't afford to live by outside agitator principles or resistance. We can't afford to look at each other as if we are an outside agitator, because I'll tell you something, Buffalo is like Birmingham. Buffalo has a lot in common with Birmingham, Alabama during the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and the Freedom Fighters era. It was one of the most segregated places in the country, if not the most segregated. It was where endless brutality was happening at the hands of corruption in the police departments and elsewhere. But what we had to do was make sure that the community's voice was heard, because like I say, there was tremendous resistance to it by not just New York State Department of Transportation, but lo and behold, even by the political establishment. Almost the entire political establishment was pushing this project. They were pushing it to the point they said, it's okay that you want to skip over an environmental impact statement. Who would let a $1 billion project happen and let any agency do that? It begs incredulity.
Well, the litigation continues.
Exactly.
That's not that it went away, and that was the very first step. It is a legal, political, and social front that confronts them. I filed the first lawsuit in regard to this issue, myself and my wife, and what we asked for, what's called is an Article 78, a special proceeding. We didn't ask for, still have not asked for an environmental impact statement. What we asked is that the New York State Department of Transportation conducts itself in accordance with the law, what's on the books, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It is a Type 1 action under the SEQR, State Environmental Quality Review Act. That's all we've asked for. Follow the law as it is written procedurally and then substantively. Procedurally, you'll have to do an environmental assessment form of approximately 10 or 15 pages. If you do that, then it will, in all probability, compel you to do the environmental impact statement. The judge who is handling the lawsuits that came about afterward, and there have been 5 lawsuits filed independently, excellent attorneys, Alan Bozer and Adam Walters over there at Phillips Lido have been handling the litigation, in addition to the New York Civil Liberties Union fighting in terms of the Green Amendment and the Climate Leadership, Climate Protection Act, the CLIPCA. So that segment, the legal fight, is what has forestalled the New York State Department of Transportation, because not 2 days after the attorneys, that the judge says, I'm going to grant a preliminary injunction to look at this thing, New York State government says we let a contract 2 days later for the Best Street Bridge aspect of the project. Now, if they let the contract for the Best Street Bridge project of the contract, they did it without any of the noise and vibration, pollution, asbestos, or any other remediation things in a contract that are supposed to mitigate the damage that happens to the people. So in terms of replacing the structure that's there, their own consultants have said that there is 250,000 square feet of asbestos-containing material used as waterproofing behind those retaining walls. Now, they say they let a contract without a nickel spent toward remediation. They say they have $1.25 billion that's grown to $1.5 billion dollar project without a dollar spent in community benefit agreements, without even an acknowledge. The only people cut off from the structure they propose to build are the people like myself that will be hosting the construction impacts for the next 4 or 5 years. They don't pretend that there won't be blast impacts or dust and noise over the next 4 to 5 years. They just are numb in terms of how could that not be a short-term or long-term environmental impact to me and the other residents that live there. What they're saying is that it is temporary. It is 5 years, and you kind of just have to live with it. And there is no analysis of the impact on the community, even the things that they could say that might be beneficial. The so-called 11 new acres of green space, is that going to be rock concerts? Is it going to be revivals and church concerts? Is it going to be a teaching place for children to put in biodiverse and pollinator friendly gardens while you're waiting for trees to mature, et cetera, et cetera? There is no analysis of that. They have not even done an analysis of the energy use. They're building 2 substations. They're building 3 control panels, control rooms on either side outside of the tunnel. That means about 50, 25 feet from my house, my foundation, they will be blasting in order to put the control room. They're going to be running it off of 2 substations, and there's no analysis of energy usage in the whole project compared to what it is. That's the litigation piece of it. But it's curious because the project is funded under DOT capital improvement funds. All of this federal money nonsense, to me, it's funded $1.25 billion in the capital fund. And when was that granted? It was granted in April of 2022. The scoping process didn't begin until January of 22. The scoping process wasn't completed until December of 2022. They already approved and funded the project for capping it before they even finished the scoping process. All of this goes back to the absolute rigged process, the reverse engineered process of the Department of Transportation to build that tunnel. And that, again, continues the culture, the concept, the mindset of Robert Moses, the power broker that still exists in the Department of Transportation, and why we're fighting this battle again.
I'm speechless. Like, I don't have anything else to say. Like, to be honest, I mean, that's it right there, right? And so my only last thing for you all is, how can people support you in this effort? If they hear you, they're angry too. How can people get involved and engage? Residents, allies, whatever, all over the city. How can people be supporting you all right now in this effort?
Well,
People can contact their public elected officials. They can call their council member. They can call the legislator. They can call the mayor or the acting mayor in this case. They can talk to mayoral candidates. They can call their legislator. They can call the county executive. They can call their congressperson. Senator Schumer is involved in getting the federal funding. So is Congressman Higgins, who's now being replaced by former Senator Tim Kennedy.
Yeah.
So what you can do is, to the public, is you can contact your public elected officials. You can write opinion editorial pieces for the Buffalo Criterion, the Buffalo Challenger, the Buffalo News. What you can also do is contact Eastside Parkways Coalition, get on the website, put your email address in so you can be subscribed to their newsletter, and you can ask for a lawn sign and display that. You can talk to your family members and your neighbors and explain to them that this generation's Kensington Expressway project, just like last generation's Kensington Expressway project, is directly impactful to the east side of Buffalo in a way that is detrimental to the east side of Buffalo, because the culture of New York State Department of Transportation is not people-oriented. They don't build neighborhoods. They are vehicular traffic oriented and driven. And we've fielded a lot of questions from people asking, well, just suppose, that the expressway were removed, what would be the negative drawbacks to the public? Won't there be traffic jams? Carmageddon is something that NISDOT said was going to happen in other projects that they've had, and it's never materialized. What would happen is through natural selection, people would adapt. They would take the other arterial roads that were damaged by the Kensington Expressway being constructed, and they would find their way to and from home, downtown Buffalo and the Greater Buffalo International Airport. We on the east side, we know how to get to downtown Buffalo. We've never been perplexed without the Kensington Expressway. We're minutes away from getting to and from downtown. So nobody from the east side needs to be asking, won't there be a detrimental impact? Won't I be inconvenienced if the Kensington Expressway is removed? What is more important than anybody's inconvenience, including suburbanites' inconvenience, is the health, wealth, wellness, best interest, and well-being of Humboldt Parkway neighborhood residents, because they have suffered for 69 years, and the suffering has included the deaths of very, very many family members.
Absolutely.
And then they'll reverse the process if the tunnel is successfully built, because then we'll have all these toxic plumes, and you'll see these signs all over Western New York and East Side stating no toxic tunnel. And we have to be able to invite people to come to our meetings for the Eastside Parkway Coalition. We meet every other Thursday, and you can go online for that. Eastside Parkway Coalition as a Google, and you can find our newsletter and information on how you can attend some of our meetings, which is every other Thursday, either at St. Philip's Episcopal Church at 15 Fernhill or the Delavan Moselle Center, and that's on Delavan and Moselle Street. So we invite you, come to our meetings, share your interests. We are connected. If we live here in Buffalo and Western New York, we're connected as neighbors. So there's strength in numbers. And if we can pull you in, and explain it more to you, show you the spans, you can see maps and pictures, talk to our attorney, talk to other people that are on the committees, and get involved, because we can use your help.
And I think making it a city issue too, because
it is
kind of our policy plan, because we want to make, right now it's a state DOT-led project. We want it to be a City of Buffalo project, because in order for this vision to happen, the City of Buffalo needs to take the lead. I think the City of Rochester, their Inner Loop project is very similar, where they actually removed a section of their highway. And that was all the actual entity of the City of Buffalo, like taking the lead and proactive on it. So yeah, we ultimately need the city to be on board with doing this. And yeah, I think the other big point is that something needs to be done, because it's the actual retaining walls, which are 40 years past their useful life. And those can't be patched. Those need to be actually replaced, which is so yeah, something needs to be done. So the idea that they can keep it the same is not really an option. But yeah, our policy is really, we're trying to make this a city issue, because in order for the full parkway to be restored, it's going to need to be a city leadership type of thing.
And I think the biggest thing too with all of that being said is, if the parkway finally is restored, people aren't going to just be able to whiz past and ignore Black community anymore. Like, people are avoiding the uncomfortability that they personally have of being within Black community. And I think the separation and the segregation of that, it's well and beyond time that ended. And so I just am so inspired by you all. I thank you all for your courage. I really could talk about this for another hour. So I know there's so much more information. Please, y'all, Patrick said, go to their meetings every other Thursday. Go to Eastside Parkways Coalition on their social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. They're pretty much everywhere. Please get involved. It's really important that we support this. And like a bunch of you have said, but Matt, that you summarized, this needs to be a city-based issue.
Yes.
And we need to take back the power into city hand and city residents' hands. And so on that note, I thank you all for being here. This has been Deja James with the Public Good, with the Eastside Parkways Coalition, a powerful group trying to restore the Humboldt Parkway. We come to you every Tuesday morning at 11:30 a.m. on podcast platforms and WUFO 96.5. We thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.